It's only week 2 of the college football season, but the Fighting Irish have already been hit hard by injuries. But can this year's Notre Dame team be the same as last year's version of Ohio State? Welcome into this first stand-up edition of Drive Through. Cary, Chow with Heather Dinich. And Heather, you're killing me in the shoe game right now.
I got the memo, man. Sorry.
I'm a little disappointed. These are a little old. All right, anyway. So Notre Dame quarterback Malik Zaire done for the season with a broken ankle. But last year, Ohio State lost J.T. Barrett, of course, towards the end of the season with a broken ankle. We all know what happened. Cardale Jones, national championship, yada, yada, yada. But what kind of connections do you see between this year's Notre Dame team and last year's Buckeyes team?
Well, Cary, fans and everybody else can go ahead and draw the parallels between these two situations. I had a really interesting conversation this week with Houston coach Tom Herman, and he was Ohio State's offensive coordinator when everything happened last year with their quarterbacks. He told me that it's still surreal looking back on it, what happened. But he recruited Malik Zaire at the same time J.T. Barrett was being recruited at Ohio State, and he also recruited Deshaun Kaiser, which I thought was very interesting. So I asked him for his scouting report on Kaiser, and he said that he really likes his leadership, and the high school coaches raved about him. His biggest question was, has he been preparing as if he were the starter? And that's something that only those within Notre Dame's program know, and Kaiser as well, heading into this Georgia Tech game.
Can you imagine if Ohio State also had Zaire and Kaiser as quarterbacks? Goodness gracious. Okay, so how will the selection committee look at Notre Dame?
Cary, I looked up what happened last year. Again, going back to Ohio State, the Buckeyes were ranked number 6 in the selection committee's ranking in that Michigan game when J.T. Barrett got hurt. After he got hurt, the Buckeyes did not drop in the selection committee's rankings because Jeff Long and the rest of the committee wanted to see what Cardale Jones was going to look like in the Big Ten championship game. So take a look at what Jeff Long said that week of that ranking. He said committee members are very interested to watch Ohio State's performance with the backup quarterback. The results on the field will dictate to us how we feel about Ohio State, how they perform in the game, and then how, if we have to project them forward, how they will compete. So, Cary, I would imagine all of those 13 committee members watching this weekend are going to take the exact same approach as we are, as they did last year. Let's see what Kaiser does. Can he do against Georgia Tech what he did against Virginia, which was lead them to a win?
Yeah, so don't punish them just yet. I like that thought process. So former Notre Dame quarterback Everett Golson, he's now in Florida State. They're 2-0 so far. His stats have been somewhat pedestrian, just 5 touchdowns, no picks. But what have you seen from Golson so far at FSU?
Well, the Texas State performance, it was an overreaction. It was very good, and it was something that Florida State fans got excited about. But I don't think that it was an accurate picture of what fans are going to see from Golson throughout the rest of the season, including this week against Boston College. He got just 6.27 yards per attempt against South Florida. Not impressive. In fact, that is the lowest number since Jimbo Fisher started calling plays there in 2007. So they're going to need more from that offense. It can't just be Dalvin Cook moving forward. Now, don't get me wrong. Dalvin Cook is one heck of a player, and he carried that offense. But without him, they're just going to need more. They can't be that one-dimensional.
Yeah, and speaking of being that one-dimensional, Cook, he's got 422 rushing yards. He almost has the same amount of rushing yards as Golson has passing yards. They both have 5 touchdowns. You mentioned it. Florida State's playing Boston College now this weekend. How long can they afford to be this one-dimensional?
Well, it's got to stop right now because this is interesting. If anybody out there is a little bit superstitious, don't forget that Boston College last year beat USC at home when USC was number 9 in week 3. And guess what? It's week 3. Guess what Florida State's ranked? Number 9. So there's a little bit of a connection there, but Boston College's rushing defense has been outstanding. Granted, it has come against 2 FCS opponents, Maine and Howard, so let's see what they really look like. But the point is, Boston College is not a gimme. This is not a gimme game. Florida State has going to be functioning on all cylinders.
I like how you're drawing these parallels and making all Florida State fans nervous.
Well, Florida State makes its own fans nervous more often than I do.
Very true. Very true. Okay, let's go to another team that's also relying heavily on their running back, LSU. They've got Leonard Fournette leaning on their sophomore star. 28 carries, 3 touchdowns in his only game. But how long can LSU rely on just Leonard Fournette as opposed to a more balanced offense.
Well, they're going to need that against Auburn. Now, say what you will against Auburn, coming off a very terrible performance against Jacksonville State, even though they won. But look, that running game can't carry them through the entire SEC West race. Les Miles, very upset about 9 penalties for 95 yards. That was a really big deal last week against Mississippi State. And when you look at that, what happened was it just eliminated so many opportunities for long plays. It really negated a lot of those chances. So LSU has to be more than Leonard Fournette, especially moving forward against an offense capable of putting up more points and scoring quickly.
Exactly. It's all about potential with Auburn at this point because they were so disappointing in their 2 wins, and we have to remember they're still 2-0. But this game, considering it's at Baton Rouge, what are you expecting is going to happen here? Can LSU pull forward? Because according to Vegas, they're 7.5-point favorites in this one.
Yes, I would strongly favor LSU in this game based on what we've seen from Auburn quarterback Jeremy Johnson, who has had 5 turnovers in the past 2 games. That's not good at all. That's not good. And Auburn has not been able to run the ball. That was a big deal. That's their identity. They've gotten away from that. And teams, especially like LSU, are going to try and force him into more of those mistakes, continue to put pressure on him and make him uncomfortable. And if they can't solve that turnover problem, LSU is a team that's definitely going to be able to take advantage of that. And again, this is another SEC West showdown. Everybody's talking about how all these SEC teams are ranked. We've gone from 10 to 7. I don't know if it's going to shrink anymore, but there's a good possibility considering they're all starting to play each other.
Tigers in Death Valley should be a good one this Saturday. She's Heather Dinich. I'm Cary Chow. She's got better shoes than I do on this stand-up version of Drive Thru.